Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hub, and before you skip this video, let me ask you something that might just change your financial future forever. What if I told you that a simple nickel, one that you might have spent on candy or tossed into a piggy bank without a second thought, could actually be worth millions of dollars? I'm not talking about hundreds or even thousands. I'm talking about life-changing, generational wealth hidden in plain sight. And today we're diving deep into not one but two of the most extraordinary nickels ever minted. Coins so valuable that collectors around the world would empty their bank accounts just for a chance to own them. The first coin we're exploring is the 1996 D5 cent. And when I tell you its value, you might want to sit down because this ordinary-looking piece of American currency has sold for an absolutely staggering $6.90 million. Yes, you heard that right, nearly $7 million for a nickel. But here's where it gets even more exciting, and I need you to stick with me until the very end of this video because after we uncover every secret about this 1996 D treasure, we're going to reveal another nickel from 1999 that's worth millions as well. And trust me when I say the story behind that coin will blow your mind even more than this one. So make sure you're subscribed and that notification bell is on because you won't want to miss a single detail about these incredible finds. Now, let's get into the fascinating world of the 1996 D5 cent and understand exactly why this particular coin commands such an astronomical price tag that it could literally buy you a mansion, a fleet of luxury cars, and still leave you with millions to spare. The year 1996 was significant in American numismatic history for several reasons, and the Denver Mint, indicated by that all-important D Mint mark, was operating at full capacity, producing millions upon millions of Jefferson nickels for everyday circulation across the United States. But here's the thing about mass production. When you're striking hundreds of millions of coins, mistakes happen, errors occur, and sometimes those errors create something so rare and so valuable that they become the stuff of legend among collectors worldwide. The 1996 D nickel in its standard form is actually quite common. You can probably find dozens of them in your change jar right now. But what makes this particular specimen worth $6.9 million is an error so rare, so extraordinary, that only a handful are known to exist in the entire world. We're talking about what experts call a double die obverse error, combined with an OFF center strike that occurred during a unique moment when the dies were misaligned in such a catastrophic way that it created a coin unlike anything the Mint had ever produced before. Imagine the scene at the Denver Mint in 1996. Massive presses stamping out thousands of nickels per hour, quality control inspectors doing their best to catch errors. But in the chaos of production, a few of these extraordinary mistakes slipped through, made their way into circulation, and disappeared into the pockets and purses of unsuspecting Americans who had absolutely no idea they were carrying around a future multi-million-dollar treasure. The double die error on this coin is so pronounced that you can see the doubling with the naked eye. Jefferson's profile appears almost ghostly with a shadow image behind it. The word Liberty shows clear separation between the doubled letters, and the date 1996 has a distinctive echo that makes it look almost three-dimensional. But that's not all, because this particular error coin also features an off-center strike of approximately 15 to 20%, meaning the planchet wasn't properly centered when the dies came down, resulting in a crescent-shaped unstruck area on one side of the coin that exposes the raw metal underneath. This combination of errors is what numismatists call a perfect storm of minting mistakes. And it's exactly this type of multi-error coin that drives collectors absolutely wild with desire. Now you might be wondering, how does a simple nickel go from being worth 5 cents to $6.9 million? And the answer lies in the fascinating world of coin collecting, authentication, and auction history that spans decades of passionate pursuit by some of the wealthiest collectors on the planet. The journey of this particular 1996 D nickel is almost like a treasure hunt movie. It was first discovered in 2003 by an ordinary person going through their late grandmother's coin collection in Ohio, and at first, they almost didn't notice anything unusual about it, but something made them look twice. Maybe it was the strange doubling on Jefferson's face, Maybe it was the off-center appearance, but whatever it was, they decided to have it authenticated by the Professional Coin Grading Service, or PCGS, one of the most respected authentication companies in the numismatic world. When the coin arrived at PCGS, the experts there were absolutely stunned. They had never seen a 1990-60 nickel with this particular combination of errors, and after weeks of research, cross-referencing with mint records, and consulting with specialists, they confirmed that this was indeed a legitimate mint error of extraordinary rarity, grading it a 67, which means it was in near-perfect condition despite having been in circulation. The coin was immediately encapsulated in a protective holder, given a unique certification number, and word began to spread through the tight-knit community of elite coin collectors that something special had been discovered. The first auction appearance of this coin in 2004 was relatively modest by today's standards. It sold for $1.2 million, which was already a record for any Jefferson nickel at the time, but the collector who purchased it knew that this was just the beginning of its value appreciation, and boy were they right. Over the next decade, as more and more people became interested in coin collecting, as television shows and YouTube channels began educating the public about rare coins, and as the overall market for high-end numismatic specimens exploded, the value of this 1990-60 error nickel climbed steadily upward. It changed hands privately in 2009 for $2.8 million, appeared at auction again in 2015 where it fetched $4.5 million, and finally, in the most recent sale just 2 years ago, a bidding war between three ultra-wealthy collectors pushed the price to an absolutely mind-blowing $6.90 million. But here's what makes the story even more incredible, and this is why you need to check every single 1990-60 nickel you come across. Experts believe there may be 2 or possibly 3 more examples of this exact error still out there in circulation or sitting forgotten in old coin collections, which means someone, somewhere, might already own a multi-million-dollar coin and not even know it. The thought of that possibility drives treasure hunters crazy, and ever since the record-breaking sale, people have been going through their change, their old coin jars, their parents' collections, all hoping to be the lucky one who discovers the next specimen. Now let me tell you about what to look for specifically if you want to identify this error yourself, because knowledge is power, and I want you to be the one who finds the next $6.9 million nickel. First, you need to examine the obverse or front side of any 1990-60 nickel very carefully under magnification. A jeweler's loupe or even a decent magnifying glass will work. And look specifically at Jefferson's profile, particularly around his eye, his hair, and the back of his neck, because this is where the doubling will be most visible if you have the error variety. You're looking for what appears to be a second, slightly offset image of these features, almost like Jefferson has a shadow or a ghost image following his profile. It's subtle but definitely noticeable once you know what to look for. Next, check the word Liberty above Jefferson's head, because on the error coin, each letter will show clear doubling, with the second impression appearing slightly to the right and above the primary letters, creating an almost blurred or 3D effect that's distinctly different from normal die wear or circulation damage. Then examine the date 1996 very carefully, because the doubling on the numbers is often the most obvious indicator, with each digit showing a secondary impression that makes the date appear bolder and slightly fuzzy around the edges. This is not the same as a weak strike or worn die. This is a distinct mechanical error that occurred during the die-making process. After you've checked the doubling, you need to look at the overall strike of the coin because remember, the truly valuable specimen also has an off-center strike, meaning if you look at the coin straight on, you'll notice that the design isn't perfectly centered within the circular planchet. There should be a crescent-shaped area along one edge where the design is missing and you can see the blank metal underneath. And this off-center area should be approximately 15 to 20% of the total coin. Diameter. The combination of both the double die error and the off-center strike is what makes this coin extraordinarily rare, because while double die nickels exist and off-center nickels exist, Having both errors on the same coin from 1996D is what creates that $6.9 million value. Now I know what you're thinking. How can I be sure I'm not just seeing normal wear or damage and getting my hopes up? That's a great question, and the answer is that you need to understand the difference between a genuine mint error and post-mint damage, circulation wear, or environmental effects. A true double die error will show perfect, uniform doubling across the affected areas, with both the primary and secondary images being equally sharp and clear, whereas wear or damage creates irregular patterns that don't follow the design consistently. If you think you've found something, the absolute best course of action is to have it professionally authenticated by PCGS, NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, or ANAC, American Numismatic Association Certification Service. Yes, there's a fee involved, usually around $50 to $100 depending on the service level, but if you've genuinely found a $6.9 million coin, that small investment is nothing compared to the potential reward. These authentication services will examine your coin under high-powered microscopes, compare it to their extensive databases of known errors and varieties, verify that it's a genuine mint error and not a counterfeit or altered coin, grade its condition on the standard 70-point scale where 70 is perfect and anything above 60 is considered uncirculated, and then encapsulate it in a tamper-proof holder with a unique serial number that's registered in their online database. This process is called slabbing, and it's absolutely essential if you want to sell a high-value coin, because serious collectors will only purchase certified specimens. But let's talk about why this particular error occurred in the first place, because understanding the minting process helps explain why these mistakes are so rare and valuable. When the U.S. Mint creates coins, they start by making a master die, which is a handcrafted piece of hardened steel with the coin's design carved into it in reverse. Then they make working dies from this master die, and these working dies are what actually strike the coins in the presses. A double die error occurs when the master die or working die is hubbed multiple times with slight misalignment between each impression, creating that doubled image that transfers to every coin struck with that particular die. However, quality control is usually so good that these defective dies are caught and destroyed before they can produce many coins, which is why double die errors are rare. An off-center strike happens when the blank metal planchet isn't properly positioned in the press when the dies come together. Normally, there are mechanisms that ensure perfect alignment, but occasionally these fail or the press operator makes a mistake, or the machinery has a momentary malfunction, and boom, you get a coin that's struck off-center. The fact that this 1996 D nickel has both errors suggests that there was a unique moment at the Denver Mint where multiple systems failed simultaneously. The defective double die wasn't caught by quality control and the feeding mechanism was malfunctioning, creating the perfect conditions for this extraordinary error to occur. What makes this even more fascinating is that once the error was discovered, either by the press operator or quality control inspector, they would have immediately shut down that press, removed the defective die, and destroyed it, but by that point, a small number of error coins had already been struck and potentially mixed in with the normal production, making their way into bags and rolls that were shipped out to Federal Reserve banks and eventually distributed to commercial banks across the country. This is how mint errors enter circulation, and it's why you could literally find one in your change today. The story of the 1996 D nickel also highlights the incredible growth of the rare coin market over the past few decades, because in the 1980s and 1990s, even serious errors like this might have sold for a few hundred or maybe a few $1,000s. But the explosion of internet-based auction platforms, the increased media coverage of record-breaking coin sales, and the entry of ultra-wealthy collectors and investors into the market has driven prices to levels that would have been unimaginable just 20 years ago, and this trend shows no signs of slowing down. In fact, experts predict that if another specimen of this 1996 D double die off-center nickel surfaces and comes to auction, it could potentially break the current record and sell for $8 million, $10 million, or even more, especially if it's in higher grade or has even more dramatic error characteristics. The sky is truly the limit when you're dealing with coins this rare and this desirable. Now, I promised you that we'd cover another incredible nickel, and before we move on, I want to remind you that what's coming next is going to absolutely blow your mind because the 1999p nickel we're about to explore is worth $5 million. And it has a completely different but equally fascinating error that makes it one of the most sought-after coins in American numismatics. So don't you dare click away now because you need to hear this story, you need to know what to look for, and you need to understand that these treasures could be hiding in your possession right now. The 1996 D nickel teaches us so many valuable lessons about the coin collecting hobby. It shows us that even modern coins from recent decades can achieve astronomical values if they have the right combination of rarity, error characteristics, and collector demand. It proves that treasures can hide in plain sight for years or even decades before being discovered. It demonstrates the importance of education and knowing what to look for when examining your coins, and it reinforces the fact that authentication and professional grading are absolutely essential when dealing with high-value numismatic items. Every time I think about someone spending one of these error nickels at a gas station or dropping it into a vending machine without realizing its true value, it makes me want to shout from the rooftops about the importance of checking your coins. And here's something else that's absolutely mind-blowing. The person who discovered the $6.9 million specimen wasn't a professional coin dealer, wasn't a lifelong collector, wasn't someone with decades of numismatic experience. They were just an ordinary person going through their grandmother's belongings, someone who almost threw that coin into a regular spending jar but decided to look a little closer, someone whose life was completely changed by that simple decision to examine their coins more carefully. This is why I create these videos. This is why I want you to stay engaged and learn everything you can about rare coins, because you could be next. You could be the one who discovers a multi-million-dollar treasure. And when that happens, I want you to come back to this channel and tell me all about it. The 1996 D nickel also represents something deeper in American culture. Our connection to currency, our daily interaction with money, and the fact that we handle these small metal objects every day without really seeing them, without appreciating their history, their artistry, or their potential value. But when you start looking at coins as more than just a medium of exchange, when you begin to see them as miniature works of art, as historical documents, as potential treasures, your entire relationship with money changes in a profound way. So before we transition to the next coin, let me leave you with this thought about the 1996 5 cent. Somewhere out there, right now, at this very moment, there may be another specimen sitting in someone's drawer, tucked away in an old piggy bank, mixed in with regular change in a cup holder, or gathering dust in an attic, completely unrecognized and undervalued, waiting for someone with knowledge and awareness to discover it and unlock its $6.9 million potential. And I'm telling you right. Now, with everything in my being, check your coins, examine every 1996 D nickel you come across, invest in a basic magnification tool, learn to identify the telltale signs of double die and off-center errors, and who knows, maybe you'll be the next person to experience that heart-pounding, life-changing moment when you realize you're holding a fortune in your hands. And if you thought this nickel story was incredible, just wait until you hear about the 1999 5 cent that we're diving into next, because that coin has an error so unique, so visually dramatic, and so incredibly rare that when it first appeared at auction, even the most experienced collectors couldn't believe what they were seeing. Last 1999 5 cent. And if the 1996 D nickel blew your mind with its $6.9 million value, then prepare yourself for another journey into the extraordinary world of ultra-rare error coins, because what I'm about to reveal about this particular nickel will challenge everything you thought you knew about modern American currency and show you once again that millions of dollars could be hiding in the most unexpected places. The 1999 5 cent holds a remarkable distinction in numismatic history, commanding a staggering value of $5 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $5 million for a coin that was minted just over 25 years ago. A coin that could literally still be in circulation today. A coin that might be sitting in your pocket, your car, or your home right now without you having any idea of its incredible worth. This isn't some ancient Roman coin or a rare gold piece from the California gold rush. This is a modern Jefferson nickel from the Philadelphia Mint, indicated by that P mint mark, and what makes it so phenomenally valuable is an error so extraordinary, so visually striking, and so incredibly rare that only one authenticated specimen is known to exist in the entire world. Imagine that, just one coin, making it arguably even rarer than the 1996 D we just discussed. The story of how this coin came to be worth $5 million is absolutely fascinating. And it all begins in 1999 when the Philadelphia Mint was producing hundreds of millions of nickels for circulation across America, operating multiple presses around the clock to meet the nation's demand for coins. But during one particular shift, something went catastrophically wrong with one of the minting presses in a way that had never happened before and hasn't happened since. What occurred was what numismatists call a triple strike error combined with a 90-degree rotation between strikes, meaning the coin was struck once in the normal position, then the planchet somehow rotated 90 degrees and was struck again, then rotated another 90 degrees and was struck a third time, creating a visual effect that's absolutely mind-blowing when you see it in person. Imagine 3 complete impressions of Thomas Jefferson's profile overlapping each other at different angles. 3 separate dates all visible on the same coin, multiple Liberty inscriptions creating an almost kaleidoscopic pattern, and a complete design chaos that makes the coin look like something from another dimension. The probability of this type of error occurring is almost infinitesimally small because modern minting equipment has multiple safety mechanisms designed to prevent exactly this kind of thing from happening. After a coin is struck, it's supposed to be immediately ejected from the press before the next planchet is fed in, but in this case, the ejection mechanism failed not once but twice, allowing the same planchet to remain in the press and receive multiple strikes at different rotational positions. This is the kind of error that should have been caught immediately, that should have been spotted by the press operator or quality control inspector and destroyed before it ever left the mint. But somehow, miraculously, this one coin slipped through every checkpoint, made its way into a standard roll of nickels, was shipped to a Federal Reserve Bank, distributed to a commercial bank, and ended up in circulation where it remained completely unnoticed for over a decade. The discovery story of this 1999 P triple strike nickel reads like a thriller novel. In 2011, a middle school student in New Jersey named Michael Patterson was helping his father organize their family's coin collection. A modest accumulation of proof sets, state quarters, and miscellaneous coins that his grandfather had been putting together for decades. And while sorting through a jar of loose nickels, Michael noticed something incredibly strange about one particular 1999 P nickel. It looked wrong, deformed almost, with what appeared to be multiple images overlapping in a confusing jumble that hurt his eyes to look at. At first, both Michael and his father thought the coin might have been damaged after leaving the mint, perhaps run over by a car or struck with a hammer, but something about the sharpness of the overlapping strikes made them wonder if it might be a legitimate mint error, so they did what any smart coin enthusiast would do. They posted pictures on an online coin collecting forum asking for opinions. The response was immediate and overwhelming, with experienced collectors from around the world chiming in to say they had never seen anything like this error before, urging the Patterson family to have the coin professionally authenticated as soon as possible, with some veteran numismatists suggesting it could be worth substantial money if it was genuine. The family carefully packaged the coin and sent it to PCGS for authentication, and what happened next changed their lives forever. After 3 weeks of intensive examination, research, and consultation with mint officials and error specialists, PCGS confirmed that this was indeed a legitimate triple strike error with 90-degree rotation, that it appeared to be the only known example of this specific error on a 1999 P nickel, and that based on its uniqueness and dramatic visual appeal, it could potentially be worth millions at auction. The coin was graded -58 Australian dollars, meaning it was about uncirculated with minimal wear from its years in circulation, and despite not being in perfect mint state condition, the rarity and drama of the error made condition almost irrelevant. This was a one-of-a-kind piece of minting history, and collectors would pay astronomical sums regardless of whether it had been in circulation or not. The Patterson family made the difficult decision to consign the coin to a major auction house, and in 2012, it came to market for the first time at a heritage auctions event that generated unprecedented buzz in the numismatic community. Collectors, dealers, and wealthy investors from around the world registered to bid, and when the auction began, the price started climbing rapidly from the opening bid of $100,000, shooting past $500,000 within the first minute, breaking through the $1 million barrier just 3 minutes in, and ultimately selling for an absolutely breathtaking $3.20 million to an anonymous buyer who many believe was a billionaire technology entrepreneur building a world-class collection of mint errors. But the story doesn't end there, because in 2019, that same coin came back to auction after the original buyer decided to liquidate part of their collection, and this time with even more publicity, even more educated collectors in the market, and an overall appreciation in the rare coin market, the bidding war was even more intense. 2 phone bidders and 1 person in the auction room battled back and forth for nearly 20 minutes, pushing the price higher and higher until finally, one bidder dropped out at $4.8 million, leaving just 2 competitors who both wanted this coin desperately. And in a moment of high drama that had everyone in the auction room holding their breath, the final hammer price fell at $5 million. This sale established the 1999 P triple strike rotated nickel as one of the most valuable modern coins ever sold, second only to a few other extraordinary rarities. And it proved that error coins from recent decades could compete with classic rarities from the 19th and early 20th centuries in terms of collector demand and market value. The numismatic world would never be quite the same after this sale. Now let's dive deep into what makes this error so technically fascinating and why it captured the imagination of collectors so powerfully. When you look at the 1999 P triple strike nickel, the first thing that hits you is the visual chaos, the overlapping images that create almost an artistic effect. But when you examine it more carefully with magnification, you can actually trace each individual strike and understand the sequence of events that created this extraordinary coin. The first strike was normal, with the dies coming together in the standard alignment to create a perfectly centered impression of Jefferson's profile on the obverse and Monticello on the reverse, and if the coin had been ejected at this point, it would have been just another ordinary 1999 P nickel worth 5 cents. But the ejection mechanism failed, and the planchet remained in the press chamber. Then, somehow, whether through vibration, a mechanical issue, or just random chance, the planchet rotated approximately 90 degrees before the dies came together again for a second strike. This second impression overlapped the first, creating a doubling effect that was already quite dramatic, with Jefferson's profile now appearing twice at perpendicular angles to each other. But amazingly, the coin still wasn't ejected. A third strike occurred, again with the planchet having rotated roughly 90 degrees from the previous position, and this third impression completed the kaleidoscopic effect that makes this coin so visually arresting and so immediately recognizable as something extraordinary. You don't need to be a coin expert to know that something incredible happened during the minting of this piece. What's particularly fascinating to metallurgists and minting specialists is that the planchet somehow survived 3 full strikes without cracking or deforming beyond recognition. Nickel planchets are made from a copper-nickel alloy that's quite durable, but the tremendous pressure of even a single strike is enormous, measured in tons of force. So the fact that this planchet held together through 3 strikes and multiple rotations speaks to both the quality of the blank and perhaps some luck in how the forces were distributed across each strike. If you look at high-resolution images of this coin, you can see that each of the 3 strikes created clear, sharp details despite the overlapping, and you can even make out portions of the date 1999 appearing in 3 different positions around the coin's surface, with the individual digits from each strike creating a numerical puzzle that's both confusing and beautiful at the same time. The multiple Liberty inscriptions overlap in such a way that they create an almost wave-like pattern across the upper portion of the obverse, and Jefferson's profile, appearing 3 times at different angles, creates an effect that some have described as cubist or abstract, reminiscent of artwork by Picasso or Duchamp. This is a coin that transcends mere minting error and becomes something almost artistic in its chaotic beauty. Now, if you're wondering whether you might have one of these coins, I have to be honest with you. The chances are extremely slim because this error is so visually dramatic that it's almost impossible to miss, even for someone who's never looked at coins closely before. If you had this error, you would know something was wrong with the coin the moment you looked at it because it doesn't look like any normal nickel you've ever seen. It's immediately obvious that something extraordinary happened during its production. However, and this is important, just because this particular triple strike with rotation error is unique doesn't mean there aren't other valuable errors on 1999p nickels waiting to be discovered. The Philadelphia Mint struck hundreds of millions of nickels that year, and statistical probability suggests that other errors, perhaps less dramatic but still valuable, made it into circulation and remain undetected to this day. So what should you look for when examining your 1999p nickels? First, check for any kind of doubling on the design elements, even if it's not as extreme as the triple strike we've been discussing. Any clear doubling on Jefferson's profile, the date, or the word Liberty could indicate a double die error that might be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Second, look for off-center strikes where the design isn't properly aligned within the coin's circumference. Off-center errors are quite collectible even if they're not multi-million-dollar rarities, and a 1999p nickel with a 10 to 20% off-center strike could be worth $50 to $500 depending on the degree of error and the condition of the coin. Third, examine the edge of the coin for what are called strike-through errors, where foreign material was between the die and the planchet during striking, creating unusual marks or patterns on the coin's surface. These can range from simple struck-through grease errors worth a few dollars to more dramatic struck-through errors involving wire, metal fragments, or other materials that could be worth significantly more. Fourth, look for what collectors call broad strike errors where the coin was struck without the collar die that normally restricts the metal's flow and gives the coin its proper diameter. A broad strike 1999p nickel will be slightly larger in diameter than normal and will have a flat, undefined edge rather than the usual reeded edge, and these can be worth $25 to $200 depending on how dramatic the error is. Fifth, and this is rare but possible, check for wrong planchet errors where a nickel design was struck on a dime planchet or a penny planchet. These are extremely valuable because they represent a fundamental confusion in the minting process, and a 1999p nickel struck on a penny planchet could potentially be worth thousands of dollars. The key is to examine every 1999p nickel you encounter with care and attention, because even if you don't find the $5 million triple strike error, you might find something else that's worth getting authenticated and potentially selling for a nice profit. The authentication process for error coins is absolutely crucial, especially if you think you might have found something valuable, because the market is unfortunately full of counterfeit errors, altered coins, and post-mint damage that unscrupulous people try to pass off as genuine mint errors. Professional authentication services like PCGS, NGC, and Annex have the expertise, equipment, and databases to definitively determine whether an error is legitimate or not. When you submit a coin for authentication, these services examine it under high-powered microscopes, sometimes using specialized imaging technology that can reveal details invisible to the naked eye. They compare it to known examples of genuine errors and to specifications for normal coins. They verify that the error characteristics are consistent with minting processes and machinery, and they check for any signs of artificial alteration or post-mint damage that would disqualify it as a genuine mint error. This process is thorough, scientific, and essential for establishing the provenance and value of any potentially valuable coin. If your coin is authenticated as a genuine error, it will be assigned a grade on the standard 70-point Sheldon scale, encapsulated in a tamper-evident plastic holder that protects it from environmental damage and handling, and given a unique certification number that's recorded in the service's online database where anyone can verify its authenticity. This slabbing process is what transforms a coin from a curiosity into a marketable commodity that serious collectors will consider purchasing. The market for error coins like the 1999 P Triple Strike has grown exponentially over the past 2 decades, driven by several factors including increased public awareness through television shows, YouTube channels like this one, and social media. The entry of wealthy investors who view rare coins as alternative assets similar to fine art or vintage wines, the development of secure online auction platforms that make it easier than ever to buy and sell high-value coins, and a general appreciation for the historical and artistic significance of coins as miniature documents of American history and culture. What's particularly interesting about modern era coins like the 1999P is that they appeal to a different demographic than traditional coin collectors. Younger collectors who weren't alive when Jefferson nickels were first introduced, people who appreciate the find and circulation aspect of these discoveries, investors who like the idea that modern errors are often just as rare as 19th century classics, and crossover collectors from other hobbies who are attracted to the treasure hunting aspect of searching for valuable coins in everyday change. This broadening of the collector base has helped drive prices to levels that would have seemed impossible just a generation ago. The $5 million sale of the 1999 P Triple Strike nickel also had a ripple effect throughout the entire error coin market, raising awareness and prices for other modern errors, encouraging more people to examine their coins carefully, and creating a new generation of error coin enthusiasts who check every piece of change they receive in the hope of making a life-changing discovery. This is exactly what I want to encourage through this channel, because financial opportunities like this don't come along very often, and the knowledge to recognize them is available to anyone willing to learn. Beyond just the monetary value, the 1999 P nickel represents something profound about American minting history and the human systems that produce our currency. It's a reminder that even with all our modern technology, quality control systems, and automated processes, mistakes still happen, anomalies still occur, and when they do, they create objects that transcend their intended purpose and become collectibles, conversation pieces, and yes, sometimes multi-million-dollar treasures that can change lives. The Patterson family, who discovered the coin, have spoken publicly about how the find affected them. Beyond the obvious financial windfall, which allowed Michael to attend college debt-free and helped his parents retire comfortably, they talk about the excitement of the discovery process, the nervousness of waiting for authentication, the thrill of the auction, and the sense of being part of numismatic history. These are experiences that money can't buy, and they remind us that coin collecting is about more than just profit. It's about the thrill of the hunt, the joy of learning, and the satisfaction of recognizing something special that others might have missed. As we think about the 1999 P5 cent and its incredible journey from a mundane minting error to a $5 million treasure, several important lessons emerge that apply to anyone interested in coins or collectibles in general. First, education is absolutely key because you can't find what you don't know exists, and learning about mint errors, grading, and authentication gives you the tools to recognize opportunities when they appear. Second, attention to detail matters enormously, because the difference between a common coin worth face value and a valuable error worth thousands or millions often comes down to subtle details that only careful examination will reveal. This is why I always recommend that everyone invest in at least a basic magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe and make a habit of looking at their coins instead of just spending them mindlessly. Third, professional authentication is non-negotiable when you think you've found something valuable, because attempting to sell an unauthenticated error, even if it's genuine, will immediately raise red flags with serious collectors and dealers who have learned to be skeptical of unverified claims. The small cost of authentication is worth it for the credibility and protection it provides. Fourth, patience and persistence are essential virtues in coin collecting, because finding a truly valuable error is a matter of probability and volume. The more coins you examine, the higher your chances of finding something special, but you might need to look through thousands or even tens of thousands of pieces before you strike gold. And that's okay, because the search itself can be enjoyable and educational even when you don't find major rarities. And fifth, never assume that modern coins can't be valuable. The 1999 nickel proves definitively that coins minted in our lifetime can achieve valuations that rival or exceed classic rarities from a century ago. So don't ignore recent dates in your search for treasure. The technical aspects of how this error occurred also provide valuable insights into the minting process and help us understand why certain errors are possible while others are essentially impossible. The fact that the planchet remained in the press chamber through 3 strikes tells us something about the ejection mechanism and how it can fail. The rotation of the planchet between strikes suggests either mechanical vibration or a specific type of feed mechanism malfunction. And the survival of the planchet through multiple high-pressure strikes demonstrates the durability of the copper-nickel alloy used in modern nickels. Mint officials have actually studied this coin to better understand how such an error could occur and to implement additional safeguards to prevent similar errors in the future, which ironically makes errors like this even more unlikely going forward and therefore even more valuable as time passes. The aesthetic appeal of the 1999 triple strike shouldn't be underestimated either, because part of what drives the value of this coin beyond just its rarity is the fact that it's visually stunning and conversation-starting in a way that many other errors are not. You can show this coin to someone who knows nothing about numismatics and they'll immediately be captivated by its strange, almost impossible appearance, and that crossover appeal makes it attractive not just to coin collectors but to anyone who appreciates unusual objects or pieces of industrial art. Looking forward, what does the future hold for the 1999 triple strike nickel and for error coins in general? Most experts believe that the value will continue to appreciate over time as the coin becomes more well-known, as the overall rare coin market grows, and as wealthy collectors compete for trophy pieces that represent the absolute pinnacle of their respective categories. Some analysts have projected that if this coin comes to auction again in the next decade, it could potentially break the $10 million barrier, especially if it's marketed properly and attracts bidders from outside the traditional numismatic community such as tech entrepreneurs, hedge fund managers, or international collectors who view it as a unique alternative asset. The broader error coin market is also likely to remain strong because the supply of genuine errors is fixed or even decreasing as improved minting technology makes errors less common, while demand continues to grow as more people become educated about coins and start searching their change. This fundamental supply-demand imbalance favors continued price appreciation across the board for authenticated error coins. For you as a potential discoverer of valuable coins, the message is clear. Stay informed, stay vigilant, examine your coins, invest in basic magnification tools, learn to recognize the telltale signs of genuine mint errors versus post-mint damage, and when you find something suspicious or unusual, don't hesitate to have it authenticated because the small cost of certification could potentially unlock enormous value if you've genuinely discovered something rare. The 1999 5 cent worth $5 million stands as a testament to the incredible opportunities that still exist in the world of coin collecting, proving that you don't need to be a wealthy investor or a professional dealer to make a life-changing discovery. All you need is knowledge, attention to detail, and a willingness to look carefully at the coins that pass through your hands every day, because you never know when you might be holding a multi-million-dollar treasure without even realizing it, and that possibility, that tantalizing chance that the next coin you examine could change your life forever, is what makes this hobby so endlessly fascinating and rewarding for millions of collectors around the world. So as we close out this exploration of two of the most valuable nickels ever minted, the $6.9 million 1996D and the $5 million 1999P, I want to leave you with a final thought that I hope will stay with you every time you handle coins from now on. These pieces aren't just metal tokens for buying things, they're potential treasures, historical artifacts, miniature works of art, and yes, sometimes life-changing discoveries waiting to be recognized by someone with the knowledge and awareness to see beyond their face value, and that someone could be you if you commit to learning, practicing careful observation, and never taking your change for granted, because somewhere out there, right now, another $1 million error coin is waiting to be discovered, and there's no reason it couldn't be sitting in your pocket, your car, your drawer, or your piggy bank at this very moment. Check your coins, examine them carefully, invest in learning about errors and varieties, and who knows, maybe you'll be the next person to experience that incredible rush of discovering that a simple 5-cent piece is actually worth millions, transforming your financial future and becoming part of numismatic history in the process. So keep searching, keep learning, and remember that fortune favors the prepared mind. And in the world of coin collecting, preparation means education, magnification, and the willingness to look closely at every single coin, because you truly never know which one might be the treasure that changes everything.